Did you know that Ferrari arrived at Suzuka fearing the possibility of repeating one of the most embarrassing mistakes in its recent history? The Scuderia, which once dominated Formula One, is now mired in a technical crisis that threatens to drag them out of the championship fight. Stay tuned, because we're going to analyze how the SF25 is revealing the Italian team's worst fears, and why not even Lewis Hamilton can save them for now. Today I'll tell you how Ferrari, after a double disaster in China, arrived in Japan under pressure to redeem itself, and ended up revealing its deepest fractures. From risky decisions regarding the car's height to suspension modifications that might not be enough, we're going to break down why the SF25 is far from the winning car everyone expected. And I want you to tell me right away in the comments. Do you think Ferrari is managing this season well, or are they in free fall? Ferrari arrived at Suzuka under a dense cloud of media, technical, and emotional pressure. The memory of the double disqualification suffered in China was still fresh. It wasn't simply a one-off mistake or bad luck. It was a technical embarrassment for a historic team. Charles Leclerc was disqualified for not meeting the minimum car weight, and Lewis Hamilton for excessive wear on the floorboards under the car. Two fundamental errors. Two failures that shouldn't happen in a team aspiring to fight for a world title. And yet they happened. Ferrari had no grounds for appeal, nor did they even attempt to defend themselves. They accepted the blame directly with brutal transparency that exposed poor operational management at all levels. That's the kind of blow that not only damages the championship standings but also undermines confidence within the team itself. With that scenario in mind, the arrival at Suzuka became a kind of make-up exam, but one fraught with tension. They knew that any misstep could cost them even more credibility. And under pressure to avoid a repeat of the technical embarrassment of China, the team made a conservative but costly decision, increasing the height of the SF25 to prevent further plank wear. This adjustment, mandatory from a regulatory compliance perspective, had immediate and negative effects on the car's aerodynamic performance. Losing efficiency on the ground means losing downforce. And at Suzuka, where fast corners demand millimeter-precise stability, that's a direct blow to performance. Despite everything, the weekend started with some hope. The opening sectors of the Japanese circuit, especially the SEs, showed that the SF25 could have good pace under certain conditions. In that technical and flowing section, the car seemed to have some life, and that briefly gave the team hope. But as they entered the second sector, particularly in the hairpin area, that hope faded. Understeer reappeared, a condition that has plagued Ferrari since the opening laps of the season. The car wasn't turning as it should. It wasn't responding when the driver needed it to. And that, lap after lap, was dooming his options. Charles Leclerc was able to extract the best possible result from the car, qualifying in 4th place and staying there throughout the race. It wasn't a bad result, but it wasn't competitive either. He finished more than 16 seconds behind leader Max Verstappen, and most worryingly, he was unable to get close to the McLarens, who occupied 2nd and 3rd place on the podium. Meanwhile, Hamilton, with a different setup seeking another way to perform, ended up relegated to 7th place, highlighting how complicated it is to find a setup that works for both drivers at the same time. The frustration wasn't the result of a single failure. It was an accumulation of symptoms that reveal a structural problem. From conservative technical decisions to a lack of consistency in weekend performance, what was seen at Suzuka was a reflection of a Ferrari that can't break out of the vicious cycle in which it is trapped. The general feeling isn't just one of disappointment with the results. It's a ringing alarm bell. Because after 4 races, the deficit to McLaren in the Constructors' Championship now exceeds 60 points. And that's not just a statistic. It's a statement that Ferrari, as of today, is losing the battle on all key fronts for the 2025 season. The SF25, the single-seater with which Ferrari aspired to return to the Formula One elite in 2025, has become the epicenter of a technical nightmare that threatens to bury any realistic title chances. From its unveiling, this car generated high expectations. With more refined aerodynamics, revised suspension solutions, and an aggressive focus on load efficiency, the SF25 spec sheet promised pure performance, especially on high-speed circuits. But the reality has been completely different. What was shaping up to be a lethal weapon in qualifying and race pace turned out to be an extremely temperamental, inconsistent car, and vulnerable to minimal setup changes or track conditions. The best example of this contrast was the Chinese Grand Prix. During the sprint race, Lewis Hamilton achieved a sensational pole position and subsequently dominated the short race with near-perfect execution. That performance, isolated from context, seemed to mark the beginning of a new era for the Briton and for Ferrari. But 24 hours later, everything came crashing down with a brutal disqualification that exposed one of the SF25's biggest weaknesses: the team's inability to precisely control the car's height and therefore comply with the technical regulations. Most worrying is that this wasn't a matter of bad luck or a mechanical anomaly. It was a failure of concept and execution. A mistake that revealed Ferrari didn't have enough reliable data to predict how the car would perform under certain full race conditions, especially with Hamilton, whose car had suffered problems in preseason testing, preventing representative simulations. This information gap had immediate consequences at Suzuka. To avoid another disqualification due to floorboard wear, Ferrari raised the car's height, leading to a loss of aerodynamic efficiency. This forced the engineers to seek desperate solutions, such as stiffening the rear suspension, a modification designed to limit the car's bounce and stabilize it, but which also generated new problems, such as loss of traction in slow corners and worsened braking performance. What should have been a simple contingency measure ended up further compromising the car's overall balance. Hamilton, after qualifying in Japan, put it bluntly, "We're running higher than I'd like." That statement, laced with resignation, reflects what Ferrari is experiencing today. They can't run the car as designed because doing so exposes them to the risk of penalties. And by not being able to optimize its height, all the aerodynamic and mechanical work collapses. The SF25 is forced to run in an uncompetitive configuration that also generates understeer, the car's Achilles heel since the beginning of the year. The most alarming thing is that, despite the modifications introduced for Suzuka, the fundamental problems have not been resolved. The car remains unpredictable in slow corners, loses power in situations with high lateral demands, and, perhaps most seriously, responds differently depending on each driver's driving style. While Leclerc manages to mitigate some of the flaws with his more aggressive corner entry style, Hamilton is faced with a car that simply doesn't respond as expected, which has led to split setups within the garage and a lack of consistency in the car's evolution. We're talking about a car that can win a sprint race on Saturday and be disqualified on Sunday. A car that needs more development time and understanding, but competes on a relentless calendar where every mistake is paid for in positions, points, and reputation. The SF25, far from being the rebirth of Ferrari, is revealing layer upon layer of structural problems, and the worst part is that there's no quick fix in sight. While other teams are making steady progress, at Maranello they're still trying to understand how to prevent their car from self-destructing under the demands of a full race. And that, at the highest level of Formula One, is a clear symptom that something is deeply broken at the core of the technical project. The situation Ferrari is currently facing goes far beyond a one-off bad run or technical adjustments that still need perfecting. What is perceived as a systemic threat, a sign that the SF25 project, which was supposed to represent a new era of competitiveness, is instead becoming a warning of the risk the entire Maranello structure faces if radical decisions are not made immediately. It's not just about the car. It's about a technical management team that seems to react rather than anticipate. It's about an engineering team that works more in containment mode than in attack mode. And above all, it's about a development philosophy that has so far been unable to adapt to the frenetic pace of development currently set by teams like McLaren and Red Bull. The gap of more than 60 points over McLaren in the Constructors' Championship isn't just an alarming statistic in itself. It's an accurate snapshot of the kind of season Ferrari is shaping up to be. In a long calendar, yes, but one where every point lost today will cost real opportunities tomorrow. The most disturbing thing is that McLaren, with a younger and more flexible structure, has achieved what Ferrari hasn't, stabilizing its car's performance in different conditions and circuit types. McLaren not only has single-lap speed, but has demonstrated superior tire degradation, setup adaptability, and race consistency. This positions them as a rival that no longer looks to Ferrari, but to Red Bull. And it is precisely this gap with the leaders that threatens to become a deep rift. Ferrari urgently needs technical improvements that not only compensate for current errors but also redefine the entire behavior of the SF25. But that implies redesigning concepts, taking risks, and accepting that the direction taken so far may not be the right one. The most dangerous thing of all is that, instead of seeing clear signs of a recovery plan, what we perceive is a team mired in doubt. The team seems torn between two paths: continue trying to correct an erroneous concept or rush through a package of updates that might not be enough to close the gap in real time. On the other hand, the psychological impact this situation is having on its drivers cannot be ignored. Charles Leclerc, the man who has carried the Ferrari flag in recent years, is beginning to show signs of frustration. An exceptional talent trapped in a car that doesn't allow him to compete with the necessary weapons. And then there's Lewis Hamilton. His arrival at Ferrari was one of the most high-profile moves in recent Formula One history. A world champion who opted to end his career with the sport's most iconic team. But so far, his experience has been bitter. A sprint victory, a disqualification, and a car that doesn't live up to his ambitions. If the situation doesn't improve soon, even Hamilton's momentum could be eroded by a lack of results that are beyond his control. Furthermore, there's an invisible threat beginning to loom in the paddock. The possibility that Ferrari could enter a spiral of internal distrust. When technical solutions fail to arrive, when results fail to materialize, and when explanations are repeated without any changes on the track, what often follows is a fracture in team cohesion. Divisions regarding setup between drivers, execution errors on race weekends, and the feeling of always racing against the clock are symptoms of a deeper problem. What's at stake isn't just the success of a season. It's the credibility of an entire project. Ferrari can't afford another year of broken promises. Because every race that passes, every uncorrected error, and every missed opportunity not only takes titles away, it also weakens the Scuderia's position within an ultra-competitive ecosystem where the margins are minimal, but the impact of every decision is immense. And if Ferrari doesn't find a structural solution soon, what today looks like a technical crisis could become an institutional one. The threat is no longer being left out of the championship fight. The threat is that Ferrari could once again become a sleeping giant. One that looks back with nostalgia while other teams write the future. And so we come to the final point of this analysis. A journey that has taken us from the accumulated tension after the disqualification in China to the technical and strategic cracks exposed at Suzuka. Ferrari, a team that always carries the weight of its history, is going through a critical moment. It's not simply that they aren't winning races, it's that they don't understand their own car. And that, in modern Formula One, is synonymous with disaster. What we saw in Japan wasn't a single bad weekend. It was a continuation of a pattern. A pattern that begins with high expectations and ends with technical explanations that, while reasonable, don't address the root of the problem. Ferrari has talent, resources, and two of the most capable drivers in the paddock. But when the car fails, when strategic decisions are conservative and technical development becomes a reaction to mistakes rather than forward-looking planning, even the best team in the world can fall behind. The gap to McLaren already exceeds 60 points in the Constructors' Championship, and we're barely into the first third of the season. If that doesn't sound alarming, we should review what it really means to compete at the top. McLaren doesn't just have a points advantage. It has direction. It has confidence. And above all, it has a clear understanding of how to maximize its technical package. Ferrari, on the other hand, still seems to be trying to figure out its own car race after race. The SF25 isn't just a car with problems. It's the symbol of a team that has failed to find its competitive identity in this new era of F1. But all is not lost yet. The 2025 season still has time, and if Formula One has proven anything throughout its history, it's that comebacks are possible. To achieve this, Ferrari needs more than aerodynamic tweaks or new suspensions. It needs determination. It needs clear technical leadership. And it needs to believe again in a winning philosophy that today seems blurred. Because when Ferrari works, when Ferrari gets it right, the entire sport vibrates with it. Let me know in the comments what you think. Is this crisis just a reflection of poor design, or are we facing a deeper crisis within Maranello? Do you think Hamilton and Leclerc have what it takes to turn this around, or are they being dragged down by a project that's getting out of hand? And if this analysis helped you see Ferrari's situation from another perspective, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Here we'll continue to unravel every story, every development, and every intrigue that defines this exciting Formula One season. And stay tuned, because in our next video we'll analyze the secret weapon McLaren is using to challenge Red Bull, and that could completely change the dynamics of the championship. There's an innovation in its front wing that could be key, and you won't want to miss it. See you in the next analysis.